Claude Opus 5, Qwen 3.8, or Gemini 3.6. Flash, which one's actually free? I'm putting all three through 5 decision tests: cost, coding, speed, limits, and access, and keeping score the whole way. The model that wins on coding isn't the one with the easiest path to $0, and that gap is bigger than you'd think. Test 1. Cost per token. Pick the wrong model for something you run a few thousand times a day, and the bill sneaks up on you before you notice. Claude Opus 5 charges $5 per million input tokens and 25 per million output, doubling to 10 and 50 on fast mode. Qwen 3.8 charges $2 in and 6 out per million. Gemini 3.6 Flash sits at $1.50 in and $7.50 out. Qwen is the cheapest by a wide margin, and Gemini's input price actually beats Qwen's, even though Gemini's output costs more. Opus 5 runs 2.5 to 3 times pricier than either rival. That gap barely matters for occasional use, but it turns real once you're running the same job 10,000 times. Opus 5's price does buy frontier-level coding, so cheaper isn't automatically better if the cheap model needs 3 tries to match it. Batch job runners feel this test most, casual users won't. Qwen wins this round. That puts Qwen at 1, Gemini at 0, Opus 5 at 0. Price means nothing if the model can't do the work, and test 2 checks exactly that. My name is Brian, and I review AI software, so you don't have to waste hours figuring out which tools are worth using. If you've used all 3, drop a comment with which one's been the most consistent for you. Now let's get into how these 3 actually code. Test 2, Coding Benchmark Performance. Pick the weaker coder for real work, and you're the one eating retries and pull requests that don't pass review. SWE Bench gives the clearest read, though Pro and Verified are different tests, not the same number. On SWE Bench Pro, Opus 5 scores 79.2%, Qwen 3.8 67.7%, and Gemini 58.7%. That Opus 5 figure comes from a tracker citing Anthropic's own reporting, not independent confirmation. On Verified, Gemini jumps ahead of Qwen instead, 73.4 against 54.8. That gap matters for daily shipping, while Qwen versus Gemini flips depending which benchmark you read, so call that one close. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Gemini's own claim of beating its predecessor doesn't hold up independently, where its score just ties the model it's replacing. Developers running agentic coding care most. Casual chat users won't feel a 10-point gap. Opus 5 wins this round. That puts Opus 5 at 1, Qwen at 1, Gemini at 0. Cost and coding just split 2 different ways, and speed complicates things even more. Next up, output speed. A slow model turns a long generation, or a multi-step agent loop, into a coffee break every time it runs. Gemini 3.6 Flash outputs around 280 tokens per second, ranked fastest among tracked models. Opus 5 runs about 60 tokens per second standard, or roughly 150 on fast mode. Qwen 3.8's number is disputed. Alibaba's own reporting puts it near 50 tokens per second, while another source clocks it closer to 85. Either way, Gemini runs 3 to 5 times faster than the other 2 by default, and that gap turns decision-changing once you're chaining agent steps. Opus 5's fast mode closes part of that distance at double the price. Builders running high call volumes should care most, and Gemini wins this round clearly. That gives us Opus 5 1, Qwen 1, Gemini 1, all 3 on the board. Speed doesn't help if a model can't hold the whole job in its head, and that's exactly what the next test checks. Stick with me, because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. Test 4, Context and Output Limits. Feed a model more than it can hold, and it starts quietly dropping pieces of what you gave it. All three sit near the same 1 million token ceiling going in. The gap shows up on the way out. Qwen caps output at about 131,000 tokens, and Opus 5 caps at 128,000, stretching to 300,000 on its batch API. Gemini's ceiling sits at about 65,000, roughly half the other two. That only matters if you're generating something huge in one pass, since normal conversation never gets close to these ceilings. A bigger cap only matters if the model holds up over that stretch, and none of the research here scores that directly. Anyone dumping an entire codebase into one prompt feels this test the most. That makes it Opus 5 1.5, Qwen 1.5, Gemini 1. Call this a tie between Qwen and Opus 5, with Gemini behind on output room. None of that settles the question in the title, and the last test decides it. Final test, deployment and modality, the one that actually answers the question in the title. Pick based on a free label that's really a locked trial or an unshipped promise, and you've built a workflow on sand. Claude Opus 5 has no free tier that does real work. Free chat users stay on the smaller Sonnet 5 and never see Opus 5, and there's no free API path either, so you need the $20 Pro plan. Qwen 3.8 Max is free to chat with on Qwen Studio, but its older free API and login paths are gone, and Alibaba's promised open weights, which would make it actually free to self-host, missed their own date. That gap is decision-changing, not minor, even though Gemini's free tier stays rate limited, and Google can use that data to improve its own products. Budget watchers should care most here. Gemini wins outright. That makes it Opus 5 1.5, Qwen 1.5, Gemini 2, and Gemini takes the lead on the final test. Gemini 3.6 Flash is the only one with a real no-cost API key, no credit card needed, so you can start building tonight for nothing. So here's where each one stands. Claude Opus 5 won the coding test outright and tied for the biggest output ceiling, but it lost on price and lost hard on the free question, which makes it the pick for coding first professionals already paying for a plan. Qwen 3.8 has the cheapest sticker price and respectable, middle-of-the-pack coding, but its free and open story is a promise that missed its own date. Call it cheap today, maybe actually free later. Gemini 3.6 Flash is the fastest of the three and the only one you can actually start using. For nothing, even with the weakest coding benchmark of the group. That makes it the low-friction starting point, not the raw power pick. If coding power is what you care about and you're fine paying for it, Opus 5 is your default, because that 11-point gap on SWE Bench Pro shows up in your pull requests. If you want the lowest price today and can live with an open weight promise running late, Qwen 3.8 is worth choosing. If you just want to start building right now for nothing, Gemini 3.6 Flash is your lane. Given zero extra context, I'd say Gemini 3.6 Flash. The decisive reason is that it's the only one you can actually use for free today, and a rate-limited free tier beats being locked out entirely. Opus 5 technically ties for the top score, but that's not who most people should reach for first. One thing nobody talks about with Qwen 3.8 Max, Alibaba promised open weights within about a week of launch, which pointed to around August 10th. As of that date, the weights weren't posted on Hugging Face or ModelScope, no license had even been named, and Alibaba hadn't given a new date. If you were planning to self-host this model for a real ongoing free setup, you're stuck paying for the API in the meantime instead. If Qwen 3.8's weights actually land, that self-hosted setup is worth its own video, and that's the one I'd watch next, because free today and free to run forever are two very different promises.